Well, I've been a GP for about 25 years. We do see people from all different walks of life, so including people with very challenging circumstances. But I don't think I'm fanatical. I don't think I'm fanatical about nutrition. I don't really believe in extreme diets, and I think you should enjoy your food. I think people have to live. They've got to be practical. They can't spend all day in the kitchen. It mustn't cost a fortune. They've got to enjoy it. Otherwise, they won't stick to it. I mean, they might start, but they won't stick to it unless it's enjoyable, convenient, not too expensive, freely available, But at the same time, of course, it's important that any change you make is a long-term change. People have got to build in this change into their daily habits. Otherwise, the advantages won't last, obviously.
What are the biggest challenges those experiencing food poverty are facing? So obviously you're a GP, you have your patients that you see, and a lot of them are...
Of course, I suppose that a lot of them can't afford to buy quality food, or they feel they can't afford it. That might be because they're on a very low income or an insecure income. They have to obviously prioritise other things like their housing and their bills. So food is often the bit that gets squashed.
How much impact does diet have on people's health and
Yes, it has absolutely massive impact, really. I think the main problem is that people nowadays seem to eat far too much refined carbohydrate. It's been normalised in our diets, but in fact it's not really a natural part of our diet. And if you go back before the agricultural revolution, the way we've evolved over thousands of years is to eat a diet that's mainly lean protein with some plant-based foods, maybe fish, maybe grubs, bone marrow, insects, and all sorts of things that we have eaten over the years. But the one thing we haven't eaten over the years is sugar or refined flour. So it's completely unnatural for us to eat cakes, biscuits, pancakes, waffles, scones, chips, donuts, you name it. There's the entire supermarket is practically full of these things, with all the sort of more natural foods a bit sidelined. So we sort of feel it's normal in a way. We think it's normal to have Cocoa Pops for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, big plate of mashed potato and pasta or whatever for our evening meal. But in fact, all these things, when they're digested, they are turned straight into sugar. And sugar causes a surge in insulin in the body. And insulin is the hormone that basically makes you turn it all into fat. Even if you have a sugary drink, it will cause a surge in insulin, way beyond the actual amount of nutritious food that you've actually eaten. It'll overswing. So in fact, what happens, you get a massive surge of insulin, your body packs it all in as fat, and then you feel hungry afterwards. Whereas if people eat natural food, which is lean protein, high fibre plant-based foods such as fish, salads, vegetables that they were sort of evolved to eat, then because they're quite low in sugar, well, zero in sugar in fact in many cases, the insulin that is produced is only appropriate really to the food that you've eaten. So you don't get a massive surge in insulin, you just get the right amount. So you get some storage of fat, but not excessively, and it takes longer to digest, so you can go much longer before eating again. So for example, most of my patients, even the diabetic ones, and in fact I might even add perhaps especially the diabetic ones, because of the wrong advice that they're often given. And if you ask them what they have for breakfast, they'll often say porridge, toast. They seem to think because they're having porridge, that's fine, but it's not fine if you put a great big dollop of syrup in it or honey to make it palatable. And of course white toast is even worse. What people really should be having for breakfast is a boiled egg or two, or perhaps some kippers. If they had a lean protein based breakfast, it would actually fill them up for much longer. They wouldn't feel the need to snack halfway through the morning. It's worth trying actually. If you have a really high protein breakfast, it will definitely keep you going for a lot longer. So that takes some getting used to. Don't want to go to all the trouble of cooking their breakfast.
Aside from obesity, are there other risks that go along with having a bad diet?
Oh yes, lots of risks. Well, obesity, of course, is linked with lots of other illnesses, from diabetes to cancer, arthritis. But it also weakens the immune system if you have too much sugar. So people get acne, abscesses. And a poor diet's bad for the bowels, of course, get constipated, increased risk of bowel cancer, cause problem in pregnancy, lack of nutrition, lack of vitamins, minerals. It's particularly bad for children. They don't have basics when they're children, and their bone development might not be very good. And then in older people, they might be more likely to get osteoporosis. They're not if they're drinking a lot of acidic drinks, it will leach away the calcium from their system. So they'd be much better off drinking water or milk. Almost every part of the body is affected by one's diet.
Do you think there's any hope for change in this sector?
I like to think so. It certainly makes a lot of sense. I think if they could be encouraged, obviously it could be cheaper, but most people don't want to be obese.
Where are we headed if a change doesn't happen?
Well, obesity rates are going up year on year, so I should imagine that would continue. The statistics in America suggest that there really is no limit to how high obesity rates can become. We do seem to follow them with other things, obviously, and of course I didn't mention the effect on teeth, of course, children's teeth. Interestingly, though, I do think that people sometimes get the wrong end of the stick. I don't advocate too much fruit juice. Fruit juice is sometimes promoted as if it is sort of one of the 5 a day, but in fact it's full of sugar. So fruit juice really is no better than squash or Coke, really, because it's all got sugar in it. I think water is best, especially for children. Yes, obesity rates are going up all the time, and we're living longer, but we're living longer in poorer health. So I think that will be a trend that will continue. People tend to either be very careless about their health or ridiculously the other way.
Where are we headed if there's no action taken? What can future health look like? Should Public Health England / the government take action? Could GPs support this? Do you think that the government could take action in this and make a change? Do they have a responsibility being Public Health England?
Do, yes. Particularly because they've been giving the wrong advice for so long. And there's always a huge lag time before advice is commonly accepted. Many years, in fact. It has been common knowledge that butter is bad for you, for example, that fat is bad for you. It was when people started looking at the chemical structure of cholesterol and comparing it to the chemical structure of fat, and realising that there were some similarities, they made the conclusion that eating fat makes your cholesterol go up. That was the conclusion they came to. In fact, it's wrong. There's not a shred of evidence whatsoever that eating fat makes your cholesterol go up, or that eating fat causes heart disease. But it was pronounced that in fact this was the case, and I'm going back probably to the 1970s. And so you had a huge industry in artificial fats came up as a result of that. Margarine, which not only is quite revolting, but is also quite bad for you in other ways. It's a totally synthetic chemical, which may cause cancer and all sorts of things. So butter became unpopular and margarine became popular, even though it was disgusting. And GPs all over the country were busy telling people to not eat bacon and sausage for breakfast. We were all, particularly people who wanted to lose weight, were told to cut fat out. I remember even being told as a medical student that because fat has got 4 times as many calories per gram as carbohydrate, that the way to lose weight was to cut down on fat. All this was completely overlooking the fact that it's carbohydrate that causes that insulin surge that programs the body to store fat. It's not fat that makes you fat. And in fact, it's not fat that makes your cholesterol go up either. In fact, I did a little study among my own patients I put them on a low carbohydrate diet to help them to lose weight, but concerned that this might cause them to eat more fat instead and therefore perhaps put their cholesterol up, I decided to measure their cholesterol before and after my little experiment. And to my amazement, not only did everyone lose weight, which was great, but everyone's cholesterol came down as well, by an average of about 10%. So there they were, probably eating more fat than they had done before, because the only thing I was restricting was their carbohydrates, and yet their cholesterol went down. And in fact, my little mini study has been backed up by much, much bigger studies all over the world, which now prove, in fact, that reducing refined carbohydrate has beneficial effects, not only on your weight, but also on your cholesterol. That is particularly the unhealthy sort of cholesterol. So there you have it. So butter actually is now back, but unfortunately you wouldn't believe that if you talk to people. So I don't believe fat makes you fat, or indeed causes heart disease. And in fact, it all again goes back to studying our ancient history. You really can't go wrong if you do that, because this is how we evolved. Fat has always been part of our diet. You know, the Eskimos, for example, practically live on it. You know, they eat blubber from seals. The French eat more fat than the British, and yet they have a better profile in terms of heart disease. You know, think of the pâté, and they cook everything in butter. You know, now the thing is, should GPs support all this? Yes, well, I think they should, because if you've spent several decades telling patients completely the wrong information, I think you are somewhat obliged to put it right in the light of evidence disproving the original theory. Yes, I do. I mean, it's one thing not to give people advice, but if you give people completely the wrong advice, then I think, yes, we are obliged to put it right. I don't really want people who are worried about their hearts to go on eating low-fat yoghurt when the alternative, the yoghurt with the sugar in it, is in fact much worse for them. I don't want people to think that instead of having bacon and egg for breakfast, they're better off having some sugary cereal, because they're not. In fact, if you have a cooked breakfast with a glass of orange juice, the only thing that's bad for you is the orange juice, in my opinion, because of the sugar in it.
Yeah. So you do believe that Public Health England and the government, with the NHS, should take responsibility to educate, especially those living in food poverty, because they're the ones, you know,
absolutely,
who need the education the most, I guess.
That's right. Yes, they do. Yes. And schools as well, of course. You know, they should be educating children.
So you as a GP would support this?
Oh, yes.
Hypothetically,
yes,
of course.
Yes, no, most definitely. I mean, I go on about diet till I'm blue in the face, really. Everything that I believe is based on what we used to eat throughout the tens of thousands of years of human development. So I think, you know, if something was natural for us to eat 10,000 years ago, then it's probably going to be the way we were designed. It's going to be suitable for our system. But if something's only appeared in the last 100 years, then it's probably not. It's probably okay just as a treat, but it's probably not going to do as much good to eat it all day long, every day. In fact, one of the sources of inspiration that I use is also the Mediterranean diet.
That's actually what Bags of Taste is based on.
Excellent. Well, I'm really pleased to hear that.
Yeah.
The Mediterranean diet is the one that I always recommend to my patients.
Really?
Because it's been going for years and years and years. It's historical, it's traditional, it's full of fibre, it's full of healthy fats like olive oil, it's full of salads and vegetables, tomatoes, olives, fish. You know, it's the Mediterranean diet is really the best diet. And, you know, because they've been eating like that for generations, I think this method, i.e. encouraging people, Bags of Taste, to ask people to voluntarily be involved because they're interested and they want to, and to educate them and treat them like adults, and give them skills, I think this is a much, much better strategy, in my opinion, than the rather blunt strategy that the government's currently adopting, which is to heavily tax sugary drinks. I actually don't agree with that. And I'll tell you why I don't agree with it. Because they're encouraging people to drink artificially sweetened drinks instead. And there's absolutely no long-term evidence. I don't personally think it's a good idea to consume a lot of artificial chemicals which were not designed to consume. History tells us that if you mess about with nature, you're going to have problems. For example, some artificial sweeteners increase the risk of cancer of the kidney. So I don't think it's a good idea to swap one problem for another problem. So also, I don't really like being treated like a small child. You know, I do sometimes drink a sugary drink. And even though I know it's not very good for me, because I enjoy it. And I don't particularly want to sort of manipulate it into I don't want to be manipulated into drinking artificial sweetener instead. I think it's very good to give people the message that they should be drinking water, and I just think it's a bit weird at the moment where you've got artificial sweeteners being sold cheaper than drinks with sugar in. I don't think either of them are very good for you, personally. No, I think it's much better to educate people so that people choose to drink water. In fact, not only are sugary drinks bad for your health because of the sugar or the sweetener, they're also incredibly bad for the environment as well because of all that plastic that's getting thrown away. Really, if you have your own reusable drinks container and just use tap water wherever you go, then it's much better for your health and it's much better for the environment as well. It's to me, and they say they want to lose weight, and I'll say, well, you need to cut down your starchy foods, and then they'll say, oh, I never eat that. I say, okay, well, what do you have for breakfast then? Well, toast. I say, well, what do you think that is?
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So people don't really perceive what they're eating as being starchy or...
It sounds like the regular person who thinks these kind of things, though. So those people that are living in food poverty, what is the difference between their approach to their diet and, someone like me, for example, who was thinking that porridge is a healthy option? What is the difference?
Well, that's a good question, actually. I suppose, a more middle-class person might be a little bit more au fait with what carbohydrates are, but not necessarily. Some people are surprisingly ignorant about nutrition. I suppose people
those living in food
probably
poverty
have other more pressing needs, so that nutrition might not be top of the list. There might be other problems, stress, for example. I think stress has a huge effect on people's life and on obesity, and I think a lot of people are overweight because they're stressed. When you're stressed, your body makes more cortisol as a stress hormone, more adrenaline as well. And these things, they do tend to make you put weight on. That's why people on steroids put weight on. Well, people who are stressed, it's like they're on steroids all the time, so they're going to put more weight on. Because I always think, my personal view is that the weight that you are is carefully regulated by the body, almost a bit like your temperature is regulated. So you have a set temperature, and you might temporarily lower it by having a cold shower or going outside without a coat, but your body will very quickly warm itself up again, and vice versa, and I think diet is a little bit like that, not quite so closely regulated, but I don't necessarily think there's a perfect correlation between calorie intake and how much weight we put on. You can see that, it's obvious, isn't it? You can see all around us. I've got 3 dogs. I know that they all have exactly the same amount of food because they have absolutely no way of getting any food other than what I give them, and I give them exactly the same amount, and they all eat it all, but they're all completely different builds. So And you can see it's obviously genetic. I mean, obesity tends to run in families, and it's hugely affected by birth weight inversely. So the smaller you are when you're born, the more likely you are to be overweight when you're older. So I don't think diet is necessarily, certainly not calories anyway. I don't think calories necessarily make that much difference. In fact, I would say that depriving yourself of calories will actually make you put weight on in the future, because not only because it's a very stressful experience, actually starving yourself, but also it lowers your metabolism, and sometimes that metabolism stays lower even after you start eating more. So dieting actually makes people fat. So dieting is not really the answer, and calorie restriction will only have a temporary effect on your weight. And in the long run can actually make you more overweight. So I would say that in order to be a healthy weight, first of all you have to be healthy. So you have to eat a healthy diet, not too much refined carbohydrate, because that just wrecks your metabolism. You need to avoid stress, and I think a lot of poor people are very stressed. So they need to do something about that, really. They need to do something about the stress of poor housing and insecure income, and having perhaps all the social problems that might arise from where they're living. Waiter-stat, as I call it. Yes, I think we all have a waiter-stat, which you can sort of thwart slightly by eating more or eating less or whatever, but in the end your body will try and maintain its weight. In fact, the other thing that reduces your appetite is being busy. And I think that perhaps people in food poverty, might also be perhaps the same people that perhaps lack hobbies and interests and activities, and perhaps have a limited...
a lot of them are experiencing a lot of loneliness.
Yes.
Is it's a big problem, and participants, some of who become volunteers for Bags of Taste, because they enjoy being part of something and staying socially connected, making friends.
Yes, exactly, that's right, that's so important.
That's sort of part of them, that they are making a bigger change. It's not a food course that people go on and get free dinner out of or whatever.
No.
It is making that big change and giving people the
being
volunteering
happy,
opportunities and
social interaction.
Yeah.
It boosts your endorphins, which has an effect on your metabolism and helps combat stress. So, yes, doing the things that perhaps wealthier people would do as a matter of course. They would go to clubs, take up sports, join the gym, see friends. And poorer people, if they can have the opportunities to do that sort of thing as well, then that's going to help.
Yeah.